So our next speaker has come all the way from Toronto. His name is Dr. Ahmed Ramadan. He's from Burma Task Force. Now, Brother Ramadan moved to Canada when he was 4 years old from Lebanon. And from a very early age, he has had this passion for helping people. And he's pursued this passion, and he's helped people overseas, people needing help, the destitute, the ones who are innocent. And currently, he's working alongside the Canadian government and other Canadian organizations to build a momentum. Build a momentum in pressuring the Burmese government to stop this genocide. He also guides youths and other volunteers who are keen on helping those in need. He channels them and he teaches them. And he helps them put their service in use. Not through anger, but through diplomacy, through dialogue, and by spreading awareness. So I'd like to welcome Brother Ramadan, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak in front of you here today. And it's very nice of all of you to come out and help support this cause and learn a little bit about what's going on with the Rohingya community in Burma or Myanmar. Special thanks to Sister Sadia for her efforts and her passion and for her hard work. So my name is Ahmed Ramadan. I'm from the Burma Task Force, or BTF, which is the main project of Justice for All. Our objective and mission is to basically end the genocide that is going on with the Rohingya. The reason why, the word genocide is a heavy word, and it shouldn't be used lightly, and it's not a word that I'm using from my own kind of opinion, as we will learn. This is Thomas Quintana, who is the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar. And he's basing what he's saying on a study done by the International Straight Crime Initiative at London. He says that they arrive at a convincing conclusion that a process of genocide against the Rohingya population is underway in Myanmar. So this is one person that's made a comment about it. We have also at Yale University, the Lowenstein Clinic has come to the conclusion that there's strong evidence that a genocide is happening on the Rohingya community in an unprecedented. In an unprecedented action, the 7 Nobel Peace Prize laureates made a joint statement basically saying that what's happening with the Rohingya is a textbook case of genocide. And that's never happened before, where so many Nobel Peace Prize laureates condemn another Nobel Peace Prize laureate in Aung San Suu Kyi. We've already discussed London University finding that they are in the final stages of a genocide. The Dalai Lama has publicly urged fellow Nobel Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who is the de facto leader of Myanmar and the foreign affairs minister, urging her to speak out on behalf of the Rohingya community. We have Alexander Lansdorf and Mary Robinson, who have both spoken out about the recent elections that have taken place, saying that they cannot really be credible because the Rohingya were not represented within the government, were not allowed to participate in the elections, and at the same time, the military still holds 25% of the seats in parliament and in the government. So what I'm hoping to do is just give you a little bit about some of the objectives that we have from BTF, what we're trying to accomplish. We'll go into a little bit of the history of the Rohingya, where they came from, and how they got to where they are. And then we'll discuss the crisis that's going on, both the recent crisis and the crisis that's been building up for the past about 4.5 decades or more. And then finally, I will hopefully give everybody here something to do that you'll be able to take home with you and help us out with our project, both with the organizers obviously supporting them and donating here today, but also it's going to take more than just that. We're going to have to do a little bit more, and I'll give you something about that. So the Burma Task Force, again, we're here, our main focus is to try to stop the genocide that's going on towards the Rohingya. We are trying to oppose all Burmese policies that restrict the basic human rights of the Rohingya, the right to marry, the right to education, the right to work, the right to vote, the right to travel freely. There's a lot of restrictions that have been put on them, and we're trying to work with our government and with community leaders in order to pressure their government and work with like-minded countries to bring an end to this atrocities. We're trying to promote the acceptance of the Rohingya as an ethnicity within Burma or Myanmar. One of the main things that the Burmese government and the Buddhist majority population are saying is that the Rohingya are illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. We will look at the history and where the Rohingya come from and prove, the entire, all historians know and all the studies that have been done show that the Rohingya are indigenous to that land and they're living in their ancestral lands, right? But this is a propaganda that's been done by the government, and it's been perpetrated by the Buddhist extreme organizations in the country to pin basically the majority against the Rohingya minority. We're trying to open up the doors to relief organizations so they can get to some of the most troubling regions in the area. So right now in northern Rakhine, all aid has been blocked off. So even the UN and other major organizations are not able to reach northern Rakhine, where about 150,000 or more people are living in internally displaced persons camps. So we're trying to get these avenues opened up so we can get relief to some of these people that need it. We're trying to improve also the situation for the refugees that are outside of Myanmar. So there's about 500,000 refugees living in Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, India, and actually the majority of them are in Bangladesh. And while a lot of the Bangladeshi community here and in Bangladesh itself, I'm sure you've seen some of the protests that have happened in Bangladesh asking the government to treat the Rohingya better. The matter of the fact is the official policy of the country is to treat the Rohingya in a very harsh way, sometimes just as bad as the Myanmar government and the Buddhists are treating the Rohingya. So we're urging the governments that have been accepting the refugees for better treatment. One of the major problems is a racist issue, and so this is a general in the Myanmar army. You can see the quote here. In reality, Rohingya are neither Myanmar people nor Myanmar's ethnic group. You will see in the photo that their complexion is dark brown. They are ugly as ogres. This is the rhetoric that has been going around with the military, with the government, and with the people, with the media that's there, that's bringing a very racist element into the equation here. So the Rohingya are looked at as different people. They're darker, so therefore they're not as good. They're nasty, and there's other words that are being used in the media to describe them, which I won't say right now. So we're trying to promote. One of the ways that we can help is by bringing the two communities together and having them speak to each other and understand each other and realize that they are both humans, right? And once they communicate, once they talk, and once there is a dialogue between the communities, we hope that they will see the humanity in the other. And another thing is we're trying to achieve the religious freedom of the Rohingya so they can, their mosques are being burned, they're not allowed to practice, they're not allowed to attend Jummah prayers, they're not allowed to fast in Ramadan. A lot of them are being converted at gunpoint. So we want to have freedom of religion going on in Burma. We also want the people that have left, that have been resettled in the IDP camps, to come back to their ancestral lands. This is a quote by President Barack Obama. He says, "The Rohingya have been discriminated against significantly. That's part of the reason they are fleeing. I think if I were Rohingya, I would want to stay where I was born, and I would want to stay in the land where my parents had lived. But I want to make sure that my government was protecting me, and that people were treating me fairly. That's what I would want." And you can see that even former President Barack Obama, he understood the dynamic that was going on, and he knew that people want to return to their lands, they want to live freely, they want to live comfortably without living in persecution. We also want to help the media and other organizations that have been reporting on what's going on access back into the region of northern Rakhine. All the media, all independent media has been pushed out. The only thing that's being reported officially by the Myanmar government is their own propaganda, which is basically denial of any wrongdoing going on, and basically they're just cracking down on militants and on insurgents, and there's no human rights violations taking place. However, all independent organizations and media have been reporting through other means right now, whether interviewing refugees that have fled, using satellite imaging, people that are inside the camps, they've been taking pictures with their phones and videos and sending them out, and they've been getting a lot of information and realizing that what the media that is controlled by the government is reporting is not true. Another thing we're trying to do is legally charge all the perpetrators that have been accomplices in the atrocities. We have to charge them, because impunity, we believe, leads to more violence. And then finally, we're supporting a real democracy in the country. We saw the statements from other government officials that have called into question the democracy that has taken place within Myanmar. And if we were going to have a real democracy, we're going to have to include all the ethnicities and all the minorities in the country. So, a little bit about the Rohingya history. First, we can see, I just wanted to show you where Burma is located on the map. It's between Bangladesh and India from the north, and then on the bottom we have Thailand and China to the east. And the actual position of the country is very strategic. So countries want to get in here, they want to have a presence in the area, and also companies want to get in. There's a massive amount of wealth to be made in the area. There's about 60 million people living in Burma. And this is a market that's been untapped. So it's almost double the size of Canada. And you can imagine how much money there is in the infrastructure and building and that kind of thing. It's about, I have an article later, but it's about $130 billion just to start off. And a lot of companies are trying to get in there. So the first settlement that we know of about the Rohingya ancestry was about the mid-800s. They were the Indo-Aryan race that moved to the area. We know the early generations of Muslims, they used to travel to China, and on their journey to China, they would make a stop in Arakan, as it was known back then. In 957, that's when the Tibeto-Burman Buddhists started moving into Arakan, which started pushing the Rohingya back into northern Arakan, which is now known as Rakhine. You can see the coins here from 1799. There's coins also from the 1500s and other times as well that show clearly that there was a presence of Rohingya in Arakan for centuries. In 1732 is the first time we hear a term similar to the Rohingya, which was Rohingya, mentioned in one of the journals of a traveler. In 1948 is when Burma gains independence from British colonial rule, and they implemented democracy, and the Rohingya are accepted as part of the country. So the Rohingya in 1948 are considered an ethnicity of Burma, and they have their own radio shows, they broadcast, they're living in the community, they live peacefully with their Buddhist neighbors, and there are no bombs. However, However, in 1962, there is a military junta which does a coup d'etat that overtakes the government and dismisses the democracy in the country. And from that point on, they start slowly pointing the finger to the Rohingya as the problem. So the problem wouldn't be focused on a military-controlled government. And instead, they'll focus their problems on the Muslim minority in the country, that they are the problem. By 1965, that government, they stopped all radio broadcast of any Rohingya. In 1982, overnight, Rohingya are stateless. Their citizenship is revoked, and they're no longer part of the country. So this carries on. There's an exodus of people leaving to Bangladesh. The second wave of refugees happens in 1990-91, which is in 1988. There's a democratic uprising which is crushed by the military, and at this point they install a massive media propaganda campaign against the Rohingya in 1991, 92, 93, and so on, which thousands and tens of thousands of people are flee, and there's killings and other things like that. One of the major events that happens, if we fast forward to 2012, is there's a report that's sent out that basically a Buddhist girl has been raped by Rohingya men. And this story is released into the public. It's used by the 969 Radical Buddhist movement, and who's headed by Raju, and this movement is created by the Burmese government. This group uses the story to start getting people riled up, organizing, and they create a mob, and they start attacking the Rohingya in northern Rakhine. Later on, this story is proven to be false and just a fabrication. Regardless of, people are killed, burned, houses are looted, masjids are burned, houses are burned, entire villages are burned down, women are beaten in the streets, and there's mass arrests, and 150,000 people are displaced and living in IDP camps within the country, and which they've been living in until now. So this is just a kind of a very quick, brief history of where they came from, so we understand, because the main thing that the Burmese government will say is that they are illegal immigrants. So I wanted to just let everybody know, when you're doing your research and studies and maybe reading articles, sometimes they will still use that rhetoric, but we have to understand that they are actually living in their ancestral lands. So these are just some artifacts found in the mid-800s, which very closely resemble the Rohingya writing and language that we have today. So this is from back then. So the current ongoing genocide that's going on. You might be thinking to yourself that, you know what, Myanmar right now is a very poor country, there's a lot of poverty, and I'm sure the differences are not that different from the general public, but the differences are very drastic, as you can see in the charts. So the Buddhists are citizens, the Muslim Rohingya are not. The Buddhists live in their homes, the Muslim Rohingya live in IDP camps, or the 500,000 are living as refugees outside the country. There's one physician for every 700 Buddhists, there's one physician for every 83,000 Rohingya, and that's only, we're talking about Doctors Without Borders that are helping out in the area. For the most part, Buddhists are not subject to any rape or sex slaves. However, the Rohingya women are subject to rape, and human trafficking and sex slaves. The Buddhists do not need a permit to marry. However, the Rohingya do need a permit to marry, which is rarely given. And if you marry without this permit, you're jailed for 10 years. And the only way to get it is through massive bribes and connections, and basically giving up everything in order to do that, which is just a basic human right. The Buddhists can have as many children as they'd like. The Rohingya are limited to 2. The Buddhists go to school. The Rohingya have no schools. The Buddhists can be employed. The Rohingya are basically in camps just waiting to be fed by people. The Buddhists can travel freely throughout the country. The Muslims cannot. And the Buddhists can worship freely in the country. The Muslims cannot. And again, I'm not blaming necessarily the Buddhist people. This is a state sanction. This is done systematically by the government. The government is backing up this rhetoric, they're backing up the media, they're backing up the brainwashing that's going on. So we need to also understand that this is not, a lot of times in the media, it's portrayed as communal violence. It is not communal violence between two societies. It is the government that is committing these atrocities against the Rohingya and using the Buddhist majority to complete their mission. So right here we can see the concentration camps. I mean, it's just, there's 80% 80% of the 200,000 that are there today are women and children, and they're just living in these situations. People, I'm not even picking the worst pictures that there are available. These people just don't have food. They become skeletal, the children. You might have heard in 2015, the boat people and the crisis that was going on, a lot of the Rohingya were trying to flee by boat and get to other countries, and made a lot of news around the world. But a lot of people, I go to conferences, I go to different events, and I speak to a lot of people about this issue. And most people think that that was resolved and life has continued. But it's actually gotten worse for them. They go on these rickety boats, there's not a lot of food on them. A lot of them die just by starvation, or the boats will just sink because they're not built properly. Nobody will accept them to land in their country, and if they try to go back to Burma, the Burmese will say, show us documentation, which they don't have, so they end up just being stranded at sea until they basically die. So another picture on the boats that was circulating. Now, in the last few months, they've actually outlawed these boats, and a lot of these people use the boats also. A lot of these people also use the boats in order to fish, because this is the main way for them to eat. So when they outlaw these boats, now they're constructing boats out of plastic bottles and twigs and pieces of wood. This is not even, I don't know what to call this, it's not even a boat, it's just a thing. And sometimes the temperatures are really cold, it's really dangerous, that they risk their lives to go out to fish so they can feed their family, because if they don't, they're going to die anyway. So, there's no way out of it. So I want to speak a little bit about the current crisis. These are some of the major players on the national stage. So we have Aung San Suu Kyi. She's the de facto leader of Burma, and she's also the foreign minister. She's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and honorary Canadian, which is interesting. Kofi Annan, he's the former Secretary General of the UN, and he's the head of the Rakhine Commission. We spoke a little bit about Wiratu. He was featured on the cover of Time. You can see most of the cover right there, which basically labeled him the face of Buddhist terror. So again, this is not something that we are, that is hidden. This is out in the public. The international community is aware of this, what's going on. This is published in a mainstream media article, and right there on the cover, the face of Buddhist terror, this guy, Ramadan. He's responsible for a lot of the social media, a lot of the sermons, and getting people to hate the Muslims and the Rohingya. And this is a general. He doesn't recognize the Rohingya as part of the Myanmar people. You can imagine that the head of the military not recognizing you as part of the community, what kind of actions they'll take against you. So on October 9th of last year, there was another incident similar to the 2012 incident that was, proven false later on. I would imagine that this is going to be proven false also, that the 9 border patrol guards were killed by Rohingya insurgents. Since that time, these insurgents have disappeared. Nobody's ever heard of them anymore. There's no evidence to suggest that they are Rohingya or that there is any insurgency. Regardless of, the Rohingya are blamed, and another wave of attacks has started, and it's still taking place right now. Brother Anwar will be discussing a little bit more about on the ground of what's going on, but I wanted to give you an overview of the story. So since that time, the military has now issued a crackdown on northern Rakhine and against the Rohingya. 65,000 new refugees have fled to Bangladesh, 22,000 in 1 week from January 3rd to January 9th. Now the IDP camps were about 150,000 before this. They've reached 200,000 or more. 80% of them, like we discussed, are women and children. You saw the pictures of the child earlier. There's 3,400 children are in severe need of treatment and of help and humanitarian aid. The state-run media, we discussed some of the ways that they're talking about them. They're thorns, detestable human fleas. They're continually denying that there's any atrocities taking place, which is one of the trademarks of a genocide taking place. And the government continues to promise to open up the restrictions that have been put on the Rohingya to let aid to come through and to let them out. But as they keep making promises, nothing is changing. The situation is getting worse. And we need to take into account that they're just buying time in order to complete their genocide. This is really what is taking place. And I think Brother Anwar is going to talk a little bit about that too. So some of the problems with Aung San Suu Kyi, she was supposed to be kind of like the hero. You know, people loved her. She was the darling of the international community. But ever since she's come into power, she's asked the international community not to use the word Rohingya. So they've taken away the right to self-identify, which is a basic human right. She's continued to deny that any wrongdoing is taking place in Rakhine. She was being interviewed by BBC by a Muslim person, and when she found out they were Muslim, she literally said, "I was not being told I'm going to be interviewed by a Muslim." So there's racism in her tone. And she just keeps buying time for the military to continue its operation. Now, the Kofi Annan Rakhine Commission is obviously welcome, and we want independent commissions to come in and be able to study what's going on. But there are a few problems with this as well, and this is why, you know, even with the solutions that have been taking place with the Rohingya, there are serious problems. For one, there is no Rohingya on a commission of 9 people. There is no Rohingya representation. 2 of the people on the commission have made genocidal comments towards the Rohingya. And this commission is going to take a year to produce any actual recommendations, and they're only making recommendations. The recommendations are not binding, and the recommendations are not going to be studying any human rights violations. And we already discussed that with impunity leads to violence. We've spoken a little bit about the accusation of the patrol guards, and then Rakhine is being inaccessible. So I just want to show you some of the areas where Human Rights Watch has done some satellite imaging to show the burning of villages. So you can see here, this is before and after. There's about 1,500 buildings that have been destroyed. That's as of December 9th. 1,500 of them. I mean, these people don't have a lot to begin with, yet, you know, what little they have is being destroyed. So you see here the picture before and after. This is by Human Rights Watch. This is another picture before, and this is the after. You can see the clear destruction that's taking place. Human Rights Watch, in their assessment, has said that this cannot have been done. One of the accusations, which is ridiculous, that the Rohingya are burning their own homes and running away. I don't know how that makes any sense to them, even to say or suggest, but that's what they're trying to propagate. Regardless of, Human Rights Watch has said that the burning of the homes that's taking place is consistent with the movement of the armies, and they're the ones that are actually committing this. I have a picture here of 2012 atrocities, just to give you an example. I mean, we have a lot of group pictures, but something to show. This is the before, and this is after. You can see entire communities are just completely wiped out. So Human Rights Watch says, these alarming new satellite images confirm that the destruction in Rohingya villages is far greater and in more places than the government has admitted, said Brad Adams, Asia Director at Human Rights Watch. The apparent arson attacks against 5 Rohingya villages is a matter of grave concern, for which the Burmese government needs to investigate and prosecute those responsible, which is directly in line with what BDF is trying to accomplish with our coalitions such as Brother Anwar and his Rohingya Association of Canada. UN participation is crucial for such an investigation to be credible. So the Myanmar government has been doing its own investigations, which, you know, the international community has rejected. I just want to show you some pictures of how the people are living. This is in this is in Bangladesh. These people have been living like this since 2012. The one actually we just saw was an IDP camp in Myanmar. They've been living like that since 2012 as well. And that's actually one of the nicer IDP camps. You're going to see even worse pictures than that. This was described in an article as the living conditions worse than animals. That's what it said in the article. The next one, for people that have a little bit of an uneasy stomach, you might not want to look at it. It's a picture of mass graves. There have been a lot of mass graves that have been uncovered in northern Rakhine. and basically they're just finding just people buried together. One of the ways the military and the government is using to discredit some of the reporting is that anybody that speaks to any commission or any envoy that comes into the area is that they capture these people, they torture them, they make them sign a retraction, and then they use that retraction to say that these stories are fake. So a lot of the stories that they claim are fake are actually true, but when you're being tortured and they force you to sign, there's no way out of it. This is Matthew Smith, who's the director for Fortify Rights, and this is in November. So, the situation hasn't gotten better. These avenues haven't opened up. 3,000 children are suffering severe malnutrition and could die. And again, we discussed this. One of the main reasons why corporations don't care and they're trying to get into the country because there's a massive amount of money to be made. To the credit, our government has been receptive to our works. We've been speaking to them almost daily, if not weekly, and they've been very helpful, very accepting. We're working together to try to find a solution. This is a tweet from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I mean, he's not the minister anymore. There's just been a shuffle in cabinet. Unfortunately, he was really helpful. He sent this tweet out, deeply concerned by reporting violence against the Rohingya minority in Myanmar. Canada urges full humanitarian access to Rakhine State. So he's been actually very helpful. And this is one of the things that I'll be asking you to do as well later on. We're there right now. So what can you do to help us? What can you do to help? First of all, obviously, we're supporting through this event here today. Please help them. There's a lot of people, although we're not able to reach Rakhine State itself, there are a lot of refugees living outside of that area that desperately need help. So, we need to try to make it easier for them, but we also need to find a solution to the problem. If you're being killed and you're being given food, it'll help you survive, and it's definitely important, but we also need to find a real solution to the problem so these people can return to their homes, their ancestral lands, and live their lives with honor and dignity. And this is really what's important. So we're asking our government to work with other like-minded countries and put pressure, international pressure on Myanmar to find a real solution to the problem with the Rohingya. We're asking our community leaders to please speak about this issue. A lot of people don't know about it. So, in your sermons, or if you have events that are going on in your organizations, in your community centers, in your masjid, and so on, to let people know what's going on and remember them in your du'as and pray for them and let people pray for them as well. And for the people, for the general community, there are sheets on the table from BTF. If you want to sign up, we have action alerts that we email out. If you want to get involved, Sister Sadia has been helping a lot, and she needs more people to help her out from here. So if you sign those sheets, we can reach out to you, and we could give you some more specific direction about what's going on. So I know I spoke a lot, and I appreciate your patience. There's a lot of information to get through, and I actually cut it down a lot. There was a lot more for me to say, but you can imagine that when you're speaking about a community, it's not so simple. But I will leave you with this last quote before I go. This is done by the Baroness Kinnock from the United Kingdom. After Rwanda, world's leaders said, "Never again." If we fail to take actions now, Rohingya people may starve to death if they are not killed with bullets. And we may end up being the passive observers of crimes against humanity, wringing our hands belittledly and saying "never again" all over again.